Hello, children. Welcome to Clay Time with Mr. Barnes. Today we're going to learn how to make a mug. Probably already have a video of this somewhere, but we're going to do a new one today. So, I have these cardboard tubes. There's a bunch of them around the classroom, so you just kind of have to find one. If you have some of these at home, bring them in and we can always use more. So, to make a mug, you can use a slab roller, but you cannot use the boards to roll the slab because it'll dry the clay out too quickly. We need the clay to stay soft while we're working on a mug. So I'm gonna start with just this piece of clay like this, and I'm gonna kind of, just with my palm, flatten that out to about even. And then, so as white, hold on, let me do this, okay? So I'm gonna throw it down like this. See how it's getting longer? See if I can hit Edwin in the face. I almost did that. Okay, so you want it to be kind of long and thin. Now I have a tool like this. This is for cutting circles, and it has this adjustable thing, but it will also go like this and tighten that. It'll also make, maybe that needs to be a little bit smaller. It'll also make two parallel straight lines, like that. Or you could just use a straight edge and do one straight line, but you do need to have a 90-degree angle. So I'm also gonna cut one straight edge like that. Don't throw away your scraps yet because you're probably going to need them in a minute. Okay. Now, because I've got two parallel lines, I don't have to worry about it. They're both going to be the same. This is how tall your mug is going to be. So if you didn't want it to be like, that's about as tall as, I mean, you're not going to get it much taller with this tool. So if you want it to be taller, you need to have a wider piece of clay. Okay. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna line up the bottom of this cardboard tube, and I'm gonna roll carefully along the bottom until I overlap just a little bit. And then you can kind of see the little line here where I overlapped. I'm gonna pull this back up. Okay. On this side, I'm gonna push this edge down at like a 45-degree angle. And then this side, I'm also gonna push down at like a 45-degree angle. You see that, camera woman? So we're gonna score both sides, and we'll do a little water, not too much, just a little, and then we'll overlap them. And what you should get is a nice even seam there, okay? Now, this cardboard tube will start drying out the clay. So as clay dries, it shrinks. So we don't have a lot of time to work on the cardboard tube. If it pulls it too much water out of the clay, it's gonna shrink too much. It's gonna grab onto this like a vice grip until it breaks, and then your mug won't work. So we're gonna set that aside for a second. Now, I have this little piece of clay left over, but that's not quite big enough for a bottom. So I'm gonna take a little bit of extra clay, my scrap clay, and I'm gonna make a little ball. And I'm just gonna pound out another bottom, or another disc for the bottom. Okay, I might slap that on the table a couple of times. It's a good idea, especially if you're using scraps, to rib the top and the bottom of your slab, because that helps smooth it out, and it also helps compress the clay together. And if you have any cracks starting to form, it'll help get rid of them, okay? And we're gonna get some kind of board like this. And one of the banding wheels is super helpful. Okay, we're gonna take this, and I'm gonna scratch this. See how I've got the cardboard just a little bit inside, so it's not quite flush. I'm gonna scratch the bottom of this disc. I'm gonna do a little more water, just a little bit. And I'm gonna put this down. Now, if I push on the cardboard, I'm gonna cookie cutter the bottom, and the mug isn't gonna work. So I'm gonna grab around the cardboard on the top of the clay and push down on top of the clay to help the clay stick, okay? Then I'm gonna take my knife and trim, and I'm gonna leave just a little bit around the edge on the bottom. And this is kind of going to be your foot and kind of not. Now, if you just did a straight edge along the bottom and the top was really uneven, what you can do is just trim, slowly rotate this, make sure it's more or less in the middle, and then just lightly hold your knife, just kind of hold it still, and you'll be able to draw a straight line, and then you can slowly cut all the way through and have a nice even top if your top was uneven, okay? Then at the bottom, I'm gonna take that clay and I'm gonna push it up and overlap it just a little bit to make sure that I have a really good connection. Make sure that you're not pushing down too hard on the cardboard because we don't want to cookie cutter the bottom out. Now I need to get this cardboard out. Right now, this is just loose enough that I can pull it out. But if it's stuck a little bit, what you can do, right where the seam is, if you just set that on the table and then just kind of rock it back and forth just a little bit, see how that loosens it? It stretches out that seam just a little bit, and it's a lot easier to get that cardboard to come out. Now on the inside, you can still see the seam there, so I'm gonna set this back down on my wheel here. And I'm gonna take, I don't know, maybe I'm gonna take this knife, and I'm gonna make sure that I smooth that seam on the inside. And if you want to, you can also take a little tiny coil of clay, a very thin coil of clay, and put a little bit of water on that inside edge, just a little bit, and then put another coil, just like we did with the boxes. Can you see this? Here, let me get over here. Put another coil just on the inside, and I'm going to push that down, and then I'll smooth it out after I get the coil all the way in. Okay, so it's not pretty yet, but I'll make sure I hold the outside, and then I'll kind of smooth that coil on the inside. That makes sure that I have a really good connection at the bottom, okay? Now I need to put a handle on it. All right, so the handle is maybe the trickiest part. I don't want this to get too dry, but it needs to be a little bit stiffer than it is right now. So I might hit this with a hairdryer a little bit, but I just want it to not be quite so floppy. But you can put the handle on even though it is still really soft. It's a little bit easier if it's not quite so soft. So what you're gonna do is take some of your scraps and roll them together. I'm kind of folding them over each other a couple of times to help. That's wedging it and helping to get rid of some of those air bubbles. And I'm gonna leave kind of a thick, I wanna make a thick, fat coil. And then with my thick, fat coil, I've got too much. I'm gonna take it and throw it down on a table and then flip it upside down. And I'm gonna try and throw it down straight again. Okay. Then I'm gonna take a damp sponge, not a super wet sponge, just slightly damp, and kind of run it down the length of my coil on both sides. So this is gonna make the handle. And I don't know if you can see this, but it's thick here and then it starts getting too thin right there. So I'm actually gonna cut that off because I want it to be more or less the same width all the way down. I like to run my finger or my thumb down the middle and then run that damp sponge over it once or twice again. So I've already got a 45-degree angle right here. I'm gonna cut one more. And then I need to decide where on my mug I'm gonna put my handle. So I'm gonna scratch a little spot at the top and the bottom. It's up to you if you want to leave the seam showing. This is a handmade thing, so it should look like it was handmade. It should not look perfect, and it shouldn't look like it came out of a factory, okay? It should be a little bit funny, a little bit wonky looking. So I'm gonna scratch that, and then I'm gonna do a test run. I'm gonna kind of put that against there and then just bend that and see how much coil I think I need. And then I'm gonna cut this again at like a 45-degree angle so that both of those angles line up nicely against the side of the cup. So I'm gonna scratch that again, a little more water. And then I'm gonna hold it on the inside and really press that pretty firmly against the cup. And then I'll make sure that my handle is going straight up and down and I'm not off to this one side or the other. And then I'll hold my hand on the inside and press that bottom piece down really, really well. At this point, if you want, you can take a tiny little coil of clay and put it right on the inside of the top and the bottom of the handle. This will help ensure that you have a really good connection. So then I'll just take one of these sticks and kind of roll that back and forth and force that coil of clay in there and smooth it out. The last thing I'm gonna do is the edge here is kind of, it's a little bit too thick to drink from. So I'm gonna pinch that just a little bit thinner so that the rim of our mug is not too thick, and it'll help with, when we drink from it, it'll feel better to drink from, and it's less likely to dribble all over your chin. Okay, so this is still really rough. This is about 90% finished right now. What I'm gonna do at this point, because my handle might be a little bit drier, my cup might be a little bit drier, one or the other, so I'm gonna bag the whole thing and I'm gonna let it homogenize overnight. Then I'll come back tomorrow once it's a little bit more leather hard, and then I can do any final cleanup, like with a sponge. You can kind of run it around the rim and smooth that out. If you need to clean up your joins, you can smooth those out a little bit. And then you could do any carving or anything, any decorating you wanted to do on the outside of it. But that's the basic shape for a mug. Now, this looks huge, does it not? Looks way too big. Can you get that mug behind you? See that black one? Can you bring it over here? No, the other one. There you go, that one. Okay. This was made the exact same way with the same size, but look how much smaller it gets once it's fired, okay? So it shrinks about 11%. So even though it looks too big right now, it'll be a pretty good size once it's fired. Questions? Okay, thank you children for coming to Clay Time with Mr. Barnes.